Welcome to Soft Hour Library. Tonight's story begins now. Close your eyes and rest.
Chapter 17. Parker. It occurred to me the next morning that under the exhilaration produced by Tin Ho, or the perfect winning, I might have been slightly indiscreet. True, Poirot had not asked me to keep the discovery of the ring to myself. On the other hand, he had said nothing about it whilst at Fernley, and as far as I knew, I was the only person aware that it had been found. I felt distinctly guilty. The fact was by now spreading through King's Abbot like wildfire. I was expecting wholesale reproaches from Poirot any minute. The joint funeral of Mrs. Ferrars and Roger Ackroyd was fixed for 11 o'clock. It was a melancholy and impressive ceremony. All the party from Fernley were there. After it was over, Poirot, who had also been present, took me by the arm and invited me to accompany him back to the Larches. He was looking very grave, and I feared that my indiscretion of the night before had got round to his ears. But it soon transpired that his thoughts were occupied by something of a totally different nature. "See you," he said. "We must act. With your help I propose to examine a witness. We will question him, we will put such fear into him that the truth is bound to come out." "What witness are you talking of?" I asked, very much surprised. "Parker," said Poirot. "I asked him to be at my house this morning at 12 o'clock. He should await us there at this very minute." "What do you think?" I ventured, glancing sideways at his face. "I know this, that I am not satisfied." "You think that it was he who blackmailed Mrs. Ferrars?" "Either that or—" "Well," I said after waiting a minute or two, "my friend, I will say this to you, I hope it was he." The gravity of his manner and something indefinable that tinged it reduced me to silence. On arrival at the Larches, we were informed that Parker was already there awaiting our return. As we entered the room, the butler rose respectfully. "Good morning, Parker," said Poirot pleasantly. "One instant, I pray of you." He removed his overcoat and gloves. "Allow me, sir," said Parker, and sprang forward to assist him. He deposited the articles neatly on a chair by the door. Poirot watched him with approval. "Thank you, my good Parker," he said. "Take a seat, will you not? What I have to say may take some time." Parker seated himself with an apologetic bend of the head. "Now what do you think I asked you to come here for this morning, eh?" Parker coughed. "I understood, sir, that you wished to ask me a few questions about my late master, private-like." "Pray cessament," said Poirot, beaming. "Have you made many experiments in blackmail?" "Sir." The butler sprang to his feet. "Do not excite yourself," said Poirot placidly. "Do not play the farce of the honest, injured man. You know all there is to know about the blackmail, is it not so?" "Sir, I've never been—" "Insulted," suggested Poirot, "in such a way before. Then why, my excellent Parker, were you so anxious to overhear the conversation in Mr. Ackroyd's study the other evening, after you had caught the word blackmail?" "I wasn't. Who was your last master?" rapped out Poirot suddenly. "My last master?" "Yes, the master you were with before you came to Mr. Ackroyd." A Major Ellaby, sir." Poirot took the words out of his mouth. "Just so, Major Ellaby. Major Ellaby was addicted to drugs, was he not? You travelled about with him. When he was in Bermuda there was some trouble. A man was killed. Major Ellaby was partly responsible. It was hushed up. But you knew about it. How much did Major Ellaby pay you to keep your mouth shut?" Parker was staring at him open-mouthed. The man had gone to pieces, his cheeks shook flabbily. "You see me, I have made inquiries," said Poirot pleasantly. "It is as I say. You got a good sum then as blackmail, and Major Ellaby went on paying you until he died. Now I want to hear about your latest experiment." Parker still stared. "It is useless to deny. Hercule Poirot knows. It is so, what I have said about Major Ellaby, is it not?" As though against his will, Parker nodded reluctantly once. His face was ashen pale. "But I never hurt a hair of Mr. Ackroyd's head," he moaned. "Honest to God, sir, I did. I've been afraid of this coming all the time. And I tell you I didn't kill him." His voice rose almost to a scream. "I am inclined to believe you, my friend," said Poirot. "You have not the nerve, the courage. But I must have the truth. I'll tell you anything, sir, anything you want to know. It's true that I tried to listen that night. A word or two I heard made me curious. And Mr. Ackroyd's wanting not to be disturbed, and shutting himself up with the doctor the way he did. It's God's own truth what I told the police. I heard the word blackmail, sir, and well..." He paused. "You thought there might be something in it for you," suggested Poirot smoothly. Well, yes, I did, sir. I thought that if Mr. Ackroyd was being blackmailed, why shouldn't I have a share of the pickings?" A very curious expression passed over Poirot's face. He leaned forward. "Had you any reason to suppose before that night that Mr. Ackroyd was being blackmailed?" "No, indeed, sir. It was a great surprise to me. Such a regular gentleman in all his habits." "How much did you overhear?" "Not very much, sir. There seemed what I might call a spite against me. Of course I had to attend to my duties in the pantry. And when I did creep along once or twice to the study, it was no use. The first time Dr. Shepherd came out and almost caught me in the act, and another time Mr. Raymond passed me in the big hall and went that way, so I knew it was no use. And when I went with the tray, Miss Flora headed me off." Poirot stared for a long time at the man, as if to test his sincerity. Parker returned his gaze earnestly. "I hope you believe me, sir. I've been afraid all along the police would rake up that old business with Major Ellaby, and be suspicious of me in consequence." Bien," said Poirot at last. "I am disposed to believe you. But there is one thing I must request of you, to show me your bank book." "You have a bank book, I presume?" "Yes, sir, as a matter of fact, I have it with me now." With no sign of confusion, he produced it from his pocket. Poirot took the slim, green-covered book and perused the entries. "Ah, I perceive you have purchased £500 of National Savings Certificates this year." "Yes, sir. I have already over £1,000 saved, the result of my connection with my late master, Major Ellaby. And I have had quite a little flutter on some horses this year, very successful. If you remember, sir, a rank outsider won the Jubilee. I was fortunate enough to back it, £20. Poirot handed him back the book. "I will wish you good morning. I believe that you have told me the truths. If you have not, so much the worse for you, my friend." When Parker had departed, Poirot picked up his overcoat once more. "Going out again?" I asked. "Yes, we will pay a little visit to the good M. Hammond." "You believe Parker's story? It is credible enough on the face of it. It seems clear that, unless he is a very good actor indeed, he genuinely believes it was Ackroyd himself who was the victim of blackmail." If so, he knows nothing at all about the Mrs. Ferrars business. Then in that case who? Precisament who, but our visit to M. Hammond will accomplish one purpose. It will either clear Parker completely or else. Well, I fall into the bad habit of leaving my sentences unfinished this morning, said Poirot apologetically. You must bear with me. By the way, I said rather sheepishly, I've got a confession to make. I'm afraid I have inadvertently let out something about that ring. What ring? The ring you found in the goldfish pond. Ah, yes, said Poirot, smiling broadly. I hope you're not annoyed. It was very careless of me. But not at all, my good friend, not at all. I laid no commands upon you. You were at liberty to speak of it if you so wished. She was interested, your sister. She was indeed. It created a sensation. All sorts of theories are flying about. And yet it is so simple. The true explanation leapt to the eye, did it not? Did it? I said dryly. Poirot laughed. The wise man does not commit himself, he observed. Is not that so? But here we are at Mr. Hammond's. The lawyer was in his office, and we were ushered in without any delay. He rose and greeted us in his dry, precise manner. Poirot came at once to the point. Monsieur, I desire from you certain information, that is, if you will be so good as to give it to me. You acted, I understand, for the late Mrs. Ferrars of King's Paddock. I noticed the swift gleam of surprise which showed in the lawyer's eyes, before his professional reserve came down once more like a mask over his face. Certainly. All her affairs passed through our hands. Very good. Now, before I ask you to tell me anything, I should like you to listen to the story Dr. Shepherd will relate to you. You have no objection, have you, my friend, to repeating the conversation you had with Mr. Ackroyd last Friday night? Not in the least, I said, and straightway began the recital of that strange evening. Hammond listened with close attention. That is all, I said when I had finished. Blackmail, said the lawyer thoughtfully. You are surprised? Asked Poirot. The lawyer took off his pince-nez and polished them with his handkerchief. No, he replied, I can hardly say that I am surprised. I have suspected something of the kind for some time. That brings us, said Poirot, to the information for which I am asking. If anyone can give us an idea of the actual sums paid, you are the man, monsieur. I see no object in withholding the information, said Hammond after a moment or two. During the past year, Mrs. Ferrars has sold out certain securities, and the money for them was paid into her account and not reinvested. As her income was a large one, and she lived very quietly after her husband's death, it seems certain that these sums of money were paid away for some special purpose. I once sounded her on the subject, and she said that she was obliged to support several of her husband's poor relations. I let the matter drop, of course. Until now, I have always imagined that the money was paid to some woman who had had a claim on Ashley Ferrars. I never dreamed that Mrs. Ferrars herself was involved. And the amount? Asked Poirot. In all, I should say the various sums totalled at least £20,000. £20,000, I exclaimed. In 1 year. Mrs. Ferrars was a very wealthy woman, said Poirot dryly. And the penalty for murder is not a pleasant one. Is there anything else that I can tell you? Inquired Mr. Hammond. I thank you, no, said Poirot, rising. All my excuses for having deranged you. Not at all, not at all. The word derange, I remarked when we were outside again, is applicable to mental disorder only. Cried Poirot, never will my English be quite perfect. A curious language. I should then have said disarranged, NSC par. Disturbed is the word you had in mind. I thank you, my friend. The word exact, you are zealous for it. By N, what about our friend Parker now? With £20,000 in hand, would he have continued being a butler, G. pence par? It is, of course, possible that he banked the money under another name, but I am disposed to believe he spoke the truth to us. If he is a scoundrel, he is a scoundrel on a mean scale. He has not the big ideas. That leaves us as a possibility Raymond or, well, Major Blunt. Surely not Raymond, I objected. Since we know that he was desperately hard up for a matter of £500. That is what he says, yes. And as to Hector Blunt, I will tell you something as to the good Major Blunt, interrupted Poirot. It is my business to make inquiries. I make them. By N, that legacy of which he speaks, I have discovered that the amount of it was close upon £20,000. What do you think of that? I was so taken aback that I could hardly speak. It's impossible, I said at last. A well-known man like Hector Blunt. Poirot shrugged his shoulders. Who knows, at least he is a man with big ideas. I confess that I hardly see him as a blackmailer, but there is another possibility that you have not even considered. What is that? The fire, my friend. Ackroyd himself may have destroyed that letter, blue envelope and all, after you left him. I hardly think that likely, I said slowly. And yet, of course, it may be so. He might have changed his mind. We had just arrived at my house, and on the spur of the moment I invited Poirot to come in and take pot luck. I thought Caroline would be pleased with me, but it is hard to satisfy one's women folk. It appears that we were eating chops for lunch, the kitchen staff being regaled on tripe and onions. And 2 chops set before 3 people are productive of embarrassment. But Caroline is seldom daunted for long. With magnificent mendacity, she explained to Poirot that although James laughed at her for doing so, she adhered strictly to a vegetarian diet. She descanted ecstatically on the delights of nut cutlets, which I am quite sure she has never tasted, and ate a Welsh rarebit with gusto and frequent cutting remarks as to the dangers of flesh foods. Afterwards, when we were sitting in front of the fire and smoking, Caroline attacked Poirot directly. Not found Ralph Patten yet, she asked. Where should I find him, mademoiselle? I thought perhaps you'd found him in Cranchester, said Caroline, with intense meaning in her tone. Poirot looked merely bewildered. In Cranchester, but why in Cranchester? I enlightened him with a touch of malice. One of our ample staff of private detectives happened to see you in a car on the Cranchester road yesterday, I explained. Poirot's bewilderment vanished. He laughed heartily. That, a simple visit to the dentist, sate out. My tooth, it aches. I go there. My tooth, it is at once better. I think to return quickly. The dentist, he says no. Better to have it out. I argues. He insists. He has his way. That particular tooth, it will never ache again. Caroline collapsed rather like a pricked balloon. We fell to discussing Ralph Patten. A weak nature, I insisted. But not a vicious one. Said Poirot. But weakness, where does it end? Exactly, said Caroline. Take James here, weak as water, if I weren't about to look after him. My dear Caroline, I said irritably, can't you talk without dragging in personalities? You are weak, James, said Caroline, quite unmoved. I'm 8 years older than you are. Oh, I don't mind, Poirot knowing that. I should never have guessed it, mademoiselle, said Poirot, with a gallant little bow. 8 years older. But I've always considered it my duty to look after you. With a bad bringing up, heaven knows what mischief you might have got into by now. I might have married a beautiful adventuress, I murmured, gazing at the ceiling and blowing smoke rings. Adventuress, said Caroline with a snort. If we are talking of adventuresses. She left the sentence unfinished. Well, I said with some curiosity. Nothing. But I can think of someone not 100 miles away. Then she turned to Poirot suddenly. James sticks to it that you believe someone in the house committed the murder. All I can say is you're wrong. I should not like to be wrong, said Poirot. It is not, how do you say, my métier. I've got the facts pretty clearly, continued Caroline, taking no notice of Poirot's remark, from James and others. As far as I can see of the people in the house, only 2 could have had the chance of doing it. Ralph Patten and Flora Ackroyd. My dear Caroline. Now, James, don't interrupt me. I know what I'm talking about. Parker met her outside the door, didn't he? He didn't hear her uncle saying good night to her. She could have killed him then and there. Caroline. I'm not saying she did, James. I'm saying she could have done. As a matter of fact, though Flora is like all these young girls nowadays, with no veneration for their betters and thinking they know best on every subject under the sun, I don't for a minute believe she'd kill even a chicken. But there it is. Mr. Raymond and Major Blunt have alibis. Mrs. Ackroyd's got an alibi. Even that Russell woman seems to have one, and a good job for her it is she has. Who is left? Only Ralph and Flora, and say what you will, I don't believe Ralph Patten is a murderer. A boy we've known all our lives. Poirot was silent for a minute, watching the curling smoke rise from his cigarette. When at last he spoke, it was in a gentle, faraway voice that produced a curious impression. It was totally unlike his usual manner. Let us take a man, a very ordinary man. A man with no idea of murder in his heart. There is in him somewhere a strain of weakness, deep down. It has so far never been called into play. Perhaps it never will be, and if so he will go to his grave honoured and respected by everyone. But let us suppose that something occurs. He is in difficulties, or perhaps not that even. He may stumble by accident on a secret involving life or death to someone. And his first impulse will be to speak out, to do his duty as an honest citizen. And then the strain of weakness tells. Here is a chance of money, a great amount of money. He wants money, he desires it, and it is so easy. He has to do nothing for it, just keep silence. That is the beginning. The desire for money grows. He must have more and more. He is intoxicated by the gold mine which has opened at his feet. He becomes greedy. And in his greed he overreaches himself. One can press a man as far as one likes, but with a woman one must not press too far. For a woman has at heart a great desire to speak the truth. How many husbands who have deceived their wives go comfortably to their grave, carrying their secret with them? How many wives who have deceived their husbands wreck their lives by throwing the fact in those same husbands' teeth? They have been pressed too far. In a reckless moment, which they will afterwards regret, bien entendu, they fling safety to the winds and turn at bay, proclaiming the truth with great momentary satisfaction to themselves. So it was, I think, in this case. The strain was too great. And so there came your proverb, the death of the goose that laid the golden eggs. But that is not the end. Exposure faced the man of whom we are speaking, and he is not the same man he was, say, a year ago. His moral fibre is blunted. He is desperate. He is fighting a losing battle, and he is prepared to take any means that come to his hand, for exposure means ruin to him. And so the dagger strikes. He was silent for a moment. It was as though he had laid a spell upon the room. I cannot try to describe the impression his words produced. There was something in the merciless analysis and the ruthless power of vision which struck fear into both of us. Afterwards, he went on softly, the danger removed, he will be himself again, normal, kindly. But if the need again arises, then once more he will strike. Caroline roused herself at last. "You are speaking of Ralph Patten," she said. "You may be right, you may not, but you have no business to condemn a man unheard." The telephone bell rang sharply. I went out into the hall and took off the receiver. "What?" I said. "Yes. Doctor. Shepherd speaking." I listened for a minute or two, then replied briefly. Replacing the receiver, I went back into the drawing room. "Poirot," I said, "they have detained a man at Liverpool. His name is Charles Kent, and he is believed to be the stranger who visited Fernley that night. They want me to go to Liverpool at once and identify him." Chapter 18. Charles Kent. Half an hour later saw Poirot myself, and Inspector Raglan in the train on the way to Liverpool. The inspector was clearly very excited. "We may get a line on the blackmailing part of the business, if on nothing else," he declared jubilantly. "He's a rough customer, this fellow, by what I heard over the phone. Takes dope too. We ought to find it easy to get what we want out of him. If there was the shadow of a motive, nothing's more likely than that he killed Mr. Ackroyd. But in that case, why is young Patten keeping out of the way? The whole thing's a muddle, that's what it is. By the way, Ems. Poirot, you were quite right about those fingerprints. They were Mr. Ackroyd's own. I had rather the same idea myself, but I dismissed it as hardly feasible." I smiled to myself. Inspector Raglan was so very plainly saving his face. "As regards this man," said Poirot, "he is not yet arrested, eh?" "No, detained under suspicion." "And what account does he give of himself?" "Precious little," said the inspector with a grin. "He's a wary bird, I gather. A lot of abuse, but very little more." On arrival at Liverpool, I was surprised to find that Poirot was welcomed with acclamation. Superintendent Hayes, who met us, had worked with Poirot over some case long ago, and had evidently an exaggerated opinion of his powers. "Now we've got Poirot here, we shan't be long," he said cheerfully. "I thought you'd retired, Monsieur." "So I had, my good Hayes, so I had. But how tedious is retirement. You cannot imagine to yourself the monotony with which day comes after day." "Very likely. So you've come to have a look at our own particular find. Is this Dr. Shepherd? Think you'll be able to identify him, sir?" "I'm not very sure," I said doubtfully. "How did you get hold of him?" inquired Poirot. "Description was circulated, as you know. In the press and privately. Not much to go on, I admit. This fellow has an American accent all right, and he doesn't deny that he was near King's Abbot that night. Just asks what the hell it is to do with us, and that he'll see us in before he answers any questions." "Is it permitted that I too see him?" asked Poirot. The superintendent closed one eye knowingly. "Very glad to have you, sir." You've got permission to do anything you please. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard was asking after you the other day. Said he'd heard you were connected unofficially with this case. Where's Captain Patten hiding, sir? Can you tell me that? I doubt if it would be wise at the present juncture, said Poirot primly, and I bit my lips to prevent a smile. The little man really did it very well. After some further parley, we were taken to interview the prisoner. He was a young fellow, I should say not more than 22 or 3. Tall, thin, with slightly shaking hands, and the evidences of considerable physical strength somewhat run to seed. His hair was dark, but his eyes were blue and shifty, seldom meeting a glance squarely. I had all along cherished the illusion that there was something familiar about the figure I had met that night, but if this were indeed he, I was completely mistaken. He did not remind me in the least of anyone I knew. Now then, Kent, said the superintendent, stand up. Here are some visitors come to see you. Recognize any of them? Kent glared at us sullenly, but did not reply. I saw his glance waver over the 3 of us, and come back to rest on me. Well, sir, said the superintendent to me, what do you say? The height's the same, I said, and as far as general appearance goes it might well be the man in question. Beyond that I couldn't go. What the hell's the meaning of all this? Asked Kent. What have you got against me? Come on, out with it. What am I supposed to have done? I nodded my head. It's the man, I said. I recognize the voice. Recognize my voice, do you? Where do you think you heard it before? On Friday evening last, outside the gates of Fernley Park. You asked me the way there. I did I? Do you admit it? Asked the inspector. I don't admit anything. Not till I know what you've got on me. Have you not read the papers in the last few days? Asked Poirot, speaking for the first time. The man's eyes narrowed. So that's it, is it? I saw an old gent had been croaked at Fernley. Trying to make out I did the job, are you? You were there that night, said Poirot quietly. How do you know, mister? By this. Poirot took something from his pocket and held it out. It was the goose quill we had found in the summer house. At the sight of it the man's face changed. He half held out his hand. Snow, said Poirot thoughtfully. No, my friend, it is empty. It lay where you dropped it in the summer house that night. Charles Kent looked at him uncertainly. You seem to know a hell of a lot about everything, you little foreign cock duck. Perhaps you remember this. The papers say that the old gent was croaked between 9:45 and 10 o'clock. That is so, agreed Poirot. Yes, but is it really so? That's what I'm getting at. This gentleman will tell you, said Poirot. He indicated Inspector Raglan. The latter hesitated, glanced at Superintendent Hayes, then at Poirot, and finally, as though receiving sanction, he said, That's right. Between 9:45 and 10 o'clock. Then you've nothing to keep me here for, said Kent. I was away from Fernley Park by 25 minutes past 9. You can ask at the Dog and Whistle. That's a saloon about a mile out of Fernley on the road to Cranchester. I kicked up a bit of a row there, I remember. As near as nothing to 9:45 it was. How about that? Inspector Raglan wrote down something in his notebook. Well, demanded Kent. Inquiries will be made, said the inspector. If you've spoken the truth, you won't have anything to complain about. What were you doing at Fernley Park anyway? Went there to meet someone. Who's? That's none of your business. You'd better keep a civil tongue in your head, my man. the superintendent warned him. To hell with a civil tongue. I went there on my own business, and that's all there is to it. If I was clear away before the murder was done, that's all that concerns the cops. Your name it is Charles Kent, said Poirot. Where were you born? The man stared at him, then he grinned. I'm a full-blown Britisher all right, he said. Yes, said Poirot meditatively, I think you are. I fancy you were born in Kent. The man stared. Why that, because of my name? What's that to do with it? Is a man whose name is Kent bound to be born in that particular county? Under certain circumstances I can imagine he might be, said Poirot very deliberately. Under certain circumstances you comprehend. There was so much meaning in his voice as to surprise the two police officers. As for Charles Kent, he flushed a brick red, and for a moment I thought he was going to spring at Poirot. He thought better of it, however, and turned away with a kind of laugh. Poirot nodded as though satisfied, and made his way out through the door. He was joined presently by the two officers. We'll verify that statement, remarked Raglan. I don't think he's lying, though. But he's got to come clear with a statement as to what he was doing at Fernley. It looks to me as though we'd got our blackmailer all right. On the other hand, granted his story's correct, he couldn't have had anything to do with the actual murder. He'd got £10 on him when he was arrested, rather a large sum. I fancy that £40 went to him. The numbers of the notes didn't correspond, but of course he'd have changed them first thing. Mr. Ackroyd must have given him the money, and he made off with it as fast as possible. What was that about Kent being his birthplace? What's that got to do with it? Nothing whatever, said Poirot mildly. A little idea of mine, that was all. Me, I am famous for my little ideas. Are you really? Said Raglan, studying him with a puzzled expression. The superintendent went into a roar of laughter. Many's the time I've heard Inspector Japp say that. Poirot and his little ideas. Too fanciful for me, he'd say, but always something in them. You mock yourself at me, said Poirot, smiling, but never mind. The old ones they laugh last sometimes, when the young, clever ones do not laugh at all. And nodding his head at them in a sage manner, he walked out into the street. He and I lunched together at an hotel. I know now that the whole thing lay clearly unravelled before him. He had got the last thread he needed to lead him to the truth. But at the time I had no suspicion of the fact. I overestimated his general self-confidence, and I took it for granted that the things which puzzled me must be equally puzzling to him. My chief puzzle was what the man Charles Kent could have been doing at Fernley. Again and again I put the question to myself, and could get no satisfactory reply. At last I ventured a tentative query to Poirot. His reply was immediate. Mon ami, I do not think I'd... Really, I said incredulously. Yes, indeed. I suppose now that to you it would not make sense if I said that he went to Fernley that night because he was born in Kent. I stared at him. It certainly doesn't seem to make sense to me, I said dryly. Ah, said Poirot pityingly. Well, no matter. I have still my little idea. Chapter 19. Flora Ackroyd. As I was returning from my round the following morning, I was hailed by Inspector Raglan. I pulled up and the inspector mounted on the step. Good morning, Doctor. Shepherd, he said. Well, that alibi is all right enough. Charles Kent S. Charles Kent's. The barmaid at the Dog and Whistle, Sally Jones, she remembers him perfectly. picked out his photograph from among 5 others. It was just 9:45 when he came into the bar, and the Dog and Whistle is well over a mile from Fernley Park. The girl mentions that he had a lot of money on him. She saw him take a handful of notes out of his pocket. Rather surprised her, it did, seeing the class of fellow he was, with a pair of boots clean dropping off him. That's where that £40 went right enough. But the man still refuses to give an account of his visit to Fernley. Obstinate as a mule he is. I had a chat with Hayes at Liverpool over the wire this morning. But Hercule Poirot says he knows the reason the man went there that night, I observed. Does he? Cried the inspector eagerly. Yes, I said maliciously. He says he went there because he was born in Kent. But I felt a distinct pleasure in passing on my own discomfiture. Raglan stared at me for a moment or two uncomprehendingly. Then a grin overspread his weaselly countenance, and he tapped his forehead significantly. Bit gone here, he said. I've thought so for some time. Poor old chap, so that's why he had to give up and come down here. In the family, very likely. He's got a nephew who's quite off his crumpet. But Poirot has, I said, very surprised. Yes. Hasn't he ever mentioned him to you? Quite docile, I believe, and all that, but mad as a hatter, poor lad. But who told you that? Again a grin showed itself on Inspector Raglan's face. Your sister, Miss Shepherd, she told me all about it. But really, Caroline is amazing. She never rests until she knows the last details of everybody's family secrets. Unfortunately, I have never been able to instill into her the decency of keeping them to herself. Jump in, Inspector, I said, opening the door of the car. We'll go up to the Larches together and acquaint our Belgian friend with the latest news. But might as well, I suppose. After all, even if he is a bit balmy, it was a useful tip he gave me about those fingerprints. He's got a bee in his bonnet about the man Kent, but who knows, there may be something useful behind it. But Poirot received us with his usual smiling courtesy. He listened to the information we had brought him, nodding his head now and then. Seems quite okay, doesn't it? Said the inspector rather gloomily. A chap can't be murdering someone in one place when he's drinking in the bar in another place, a mile away. But are you going to release him? Don't see what else we can do. We can't very well hold him for obtaining money on false pretenses. Can't prove a ruddy thing. But the inspector tossed a match into the grate in a disgruntled fashion. Poirot retrieved it and put it neatly in a little receptacle designed for the purpose. His action was purely mechanical. I could see that his thoughts were on something very different. If I were you, he said at last, I should not release the man Charles Kent yet. But what do you mean? Raglan stared at him. What I say. I should not release him yet. But you don't think he can have had anything to do with the murder, do you? I think probably not, but one cannot be certain yet. But haven't I just told you? Poirot raised a hand protestingly. Mais oui. I heard. I am not deaf nor stupid, thank the good God. But see you approach the matter from the wrong premises, is not that the word? The inspector stared at him heavily. I don't see how you make that out. Look here, we know Mr. Ackroyd was alive at 9:45. You admit that, don't you? Poirot looked at him for a moment, then shook his head with a quick smile. I admit nothing that is not proved. Well, we've got proof enough of that. We've got Miss Flora Ackroyd's evidence. That she said good night to her uncle. But me, I do not always believe what a young lady tells me, no, not even when she is charming and beautiful. But hang it all, man, Parker saw her coming out of the door. No. Poirot's voice rang out with sudden sharpness. That is just what he did not see. I satisfied myself of that by a little experiment the other day. You remember, Doctor. Parker saw her outside the door with her hand on the handle. He did not see her come out of the room. But where else could she have been? Perhaps on the stairs. The stairs. That is my little idea, yes. But those stairs only lead to Mr. Ackroyd's bedroom. Precisely. And still the inspector stared. You think she'd been up to her uncle's bedroom. Well, why not? Why should she lie about it? Ah, that is just the question. It depends on what she was doing there, does it not? You mean, the money. Hang it all, you don't suggest that it was Miss Ackroyd who took that £40. I suggest nothing, said Poirot. But I will remind you of this. Life was not very easy for that mother and daughter. There were bills, there was constant trouble over small sums of money. Roger Ackroyd was a peculiar man over money matters. The girl might be at her wit's end for a comparatively small sum. Figure to yourself then what happens. She has taken the money, she descends the little staircase. When she is halfway down, she hears the chink of glass from the hall. She has not a doubt of what it is, Parker coming to the study. At all costs she must not be found on the stairs. Parker will not forget it, he will think it odd. If the money is missed, Parker is sure to remember having seen her come down those stairs. She has just time to rush down to the study door, with her hand on the handle to show that she has just come out, when Parker appears in the doorway. She says the first thing that comes into her head, a repetition of Roger Ackroyd's orders earlier in the evening, and then goes upstairs to her own room. Yes, but later, persisted the inspector, she must have realized the vital importance of speaking the truth. Why, the whole case hinges on it. Afterwards, said Poirot dryly, it was a little difficult for Mademoiselle Flora. She is told simply that the police are here and that there has been a robbery. Naturally, she jumps to the conclusion that the theft of the money has been discovered. Her one idea is to stick to her story. When she learns that her uncle is dead, she is panic-stricken. Young women do not faint nowadays, monsieur, without considerable provocation. There it is. She is bound to stick to her story, or else confess everything. And a young and pretty girl does not like to admit that she is a thief, especially before those whose esteem she is anxious to retain. Raglan brought his fist down with a thump on the table. I'll not believe it, he said. It's not credible. And you've known this all along. The possibility has been in my mind from the first, admitted Poirot. I was always convinced that Mademoiselle Flora was hiding something from us. To satisfy myself, I made the little experiment I told you of. Doctor, Shepherd accompanied me. A test for Parker, you said it was, I remarked bitterly. Mon ami, said Poirot apologetically. As I told you at the time, one must say something. The inspector rose. There's only one thing for it, he declared. We must tackle the young lady right away. You'll come up to Fernley with me, Ems. Poirot. Certainly. Doctor. Shepherd will drive us up in his car. I acquiesced willingly. On inquiry for Miss Ackroyd, we were shown into the billiard room. Flora and Major Hector Blunt were sitting on the long window seat. Good morning, Miss Ackroyd, said the inspector. Can we have a word or two alone with you? Blunt got up at once and moved to the door. "What is it?" asked Flora nervously. "Don't go, Major Blunt." "He can stay, can't he?" she asked, turning to the inspector. "That's as you like," said the inspector dryly. "There's a question or two it's my duty to put to you, miss, but I'd prefer to do so privately, and I dare say you prefer it also." Flora looked keenly at him. I saw her face grow whiter. Then she turned and spoke to Blunt. "I want you to stay, please. Yes, I mean it. Whatever the inspector has to say to me, I'd rather you heard it." Raglan shrugged his shoulders. "Well, if you will have it so, that's all there is to it. Now, Miss Ackroyd, Poirot here has made a certain suggestion to me. He suggests that you weren't in the study at all last Friday night, that you never saw Mr. Ackroyd to say good night to him, that instead of being in the study you were on the stairs leading down from your uncle's bedroom when you heard Parker coming across the hall." Flora's gaze shifted to Poirot. He nodded back at her. "Mademoiselle, the other day, when we sat round the table, I implored you to be frank with me. What one does not tell to Papa Poirot he finds out. It was that, was it not? See, I will make it easy for you. You took the money, did you not?" "The money," said Blunt sharply. There was a silence which lasted for at least a minute. Then Flora drew herself up and spoke. Poirot is right. I took that money. I stole. I am a thief, yes, a common, vulgar little thief. Now you know, I am glad it has come out. It's been a nightmare these last few days." She sat down suddenly and buried her face in her hands. She spoke huskily through her fingers. "You don't know what my life has been since I came here. Wanting things, scheming for them, lying, cheating, running up bills, promising to pay. Oh, I hate myself when I think of it all. That's what brought us together, Ralph and I. We were both weak, I understood him, and I was sorry, because I'm the same underneath. We're not strong enough to stand alone, either of us. We're weak, miserable, despicable things." She looked at Blunt and suddenly stamped her foot. "Why do you look at me like that, as though you couldn't believe? I may be a thief, but at any rate I'm real now. I'm not lying any more. I'm not pretending to be the kind of girl you like, young and innocent and simple. I don't care if you never want to see me again. I hate myself, despise myself, but you've got to believe one thing: if speaking the truth would have made things better for Ralph, I would have spoken out. But I've seen all along that it wouldn't be better for Ralph. It makes the case against him blacker than ever. I was not doing him any harm by sticking to my lie." Ralph, said Blunt. "I see, always Ralph." "You don't understand," said Flora hopelessly. "You never will." She turned to the inspector. "I admit everything. I was at my wits' end for money. I never saw my uncle that evening after he left the dinner table. As to the money, you can take what steps you please. Nothing could be worse than it is now." Suddenly she broke down again, hid her face in her hands and rushed from the room. "Well," said the inspector in a flat tone, "so that's that." He seemed rather at a loss what to do next. Blunt came forward. "Inspector Raglan," he said quietly, "that money was given to me by Mr. Ackroyd for a special purpose. Miss Ackroyd never touched it. When she says she did, she is lying with the idea of shielding Captain Patten. The truth is as I said, and I am prepared to go into the witness box and swear to it." He made a kind of jerky bow, then turning abruptly, he left the room. Poirot was after him in a flash. He caught the other up in the hall. "Monsieur, a moment, I beg of you, if you will be so good." Well, sir." Blunt was obviously impatient. He stood frowning down on Poirot. "It is this," said Poirot rapidly. "I am not deceived by your little fantasy." "No, indeed. It was truly Miss Flora who took the money. All the same, it is well imagined what you say. It pleases me. It is very good what you have done there. You are a man quick to think and to act." "I'm not in the least anxious for your opinion, thank you," said Blunt coldly. He made once more as though to pass on, but Poirot, not at all offended, laid a detaining hand on his arm. "Ah, but you are to listen to me. I have more to say. The other day I spoke of concealments. Very well, all along have I seen what you are concealing. Mademoiselle Flora, you love her with all your heart. From the first moment you saw her, is it not so? Oh, let us not mind saying these things. Why must one in England think it necessary to mention love as though it were some disgraceful secret? You love Mademoiselle Flora. You seek to conceal that fact from all the world. That is very good, that is as it should be. But take the advice of Hercule Poirot. Do not conceal it from Mademoiselle herself." Blunt had shown several signs of restlessness whilst Poirot was speaking, but the closing words seemed to rivet his attention. "What do you mean by that?" he said sharply. "You think that she loves the Capitaine Ralph Pattern, but I, Hercule Poirot, tell you that that is not so. Mademoiselle Flora accepted Captain Pattern to please her uncle, and because she saw in the marriage a way of escape from her life here which was becoming frankly insupportable to her. She liked him, and there was much sympathy and understanding between them. But love, no, it is not Captain Pattern Mademoiselle Flora loves." "What the devil do you mean?" asked Blunt. "I saw the dark flush under his tan. You have been blind, monsieur." "Blind, she is loyal, the little one. Ralph Pattern is under a cloud. She is bound in honour to stick by him. I felt it was time I put in a word to help on the good work. My sister told me the other night," I said encouragingly, "that Flora had never cared a penny piece for Ralph Pattern and never would. My sister is always right about these things." Blunt ignored my well-meant efforts. He spoke to Poirot. "Do you really think—" he began and stopped. He is one of those inarticulate men who find it hard to put things into words. Poirot knows no such disability. If you doubt me, ask her yourself, monsieur. But perhaps you no longer care to, the affair of the money." Blunt gave a sound like an angry laugh. "Think I'd hold that against her? Roger was always a queer chap about money. She got in a mess and didn't dare tell him. Poor kid. Poor lonely kid." Poirot looked thoughtfully at the side door. "Mademoiselle Flora went into the garden, I think," he murmured. "I've been every kind of a fool," said Blunt abruptly. "Rum conversation we've been having. Like one of those Danish plays. But you're a sound fellow, M. Poirot. Thank you." He took Poirot's hand and gave it a grip which caused the other to wince in anguish. Then he strode to the side door and passed out into the garden. "Not every kind of a fool," murmured Poirot, tenderly nursing the injured member. "Only one kind, the fool in love.